What happens when an archaeological team awakens something buried deep beneath Venoria's surface, something that shouldn't have been disturbed? You won't believe how the station turned their greatest discovery into their deadliest nightmare. The storm raged across Venoria's surface, lightning illuminating the excavation site where Dr. Evelyn Rose stood, her silhouette framed against the unearthly glow. For 7 years, she had chased whispers of an ancient civilization buried beneath this hostile world's crust. Now, staring into the yawning chasm before her, she felt the weight of discovery pressing against her chest like the planet's crushing atmospheric pressure. The dig team's lights cut through the perpetual twilight, revealing geometric patterns carved into the exposed stone patterns that defied both natural formation and known engineering principles. Jacob Hart moved beside her, his boots crunching against the crystalline soil. His tactical gear seemed incongruous against the ancient backdrop, yet somehow appropriate given the rising tension. "These readings don't make sense," he muttered, scanning the entrance with his enhanced visor. Energy signatures pulsed erratically, stronger than any natural phenomenon they'd encountered on previous expeditions. As they descended into the newly uncovered passage, the air grew heavier, charged with static that made their hairs stand on end. Every step forward revealed new layers of complexity, conduits running along walls like veins, bioluminescent panels that responded to their touch, and gravity fluctuations that suggested artificial manipulation of fundamental forces. We only just began exploring this mysterious site, but trust me when I say things are about to get much more intense. Stay with us to witness what happens when our protagonists face forces beyond comprehension. The deeper they ventured, the more the architecture shifted from recognizable patterns to something profoundly alien. Smooth walls gave way to organic shapes that seemed to breathe with the station's pulse. Dr. Rose's gloved fingers traced along bioluminescent veins running through the stone, each touch sending shivers down her spine. The material reacted to her presence, colors shifting subtly in response to her body heat and electrical field. Her mind raced through possibilities: adaptive technology, biological integration, or something else entirely. Jacob's voice broke through her scientific reverie. "Doc, look at this." He pointed to a series of carvings depicting humanoid figures being consumed by shadowy entities. The precision of the artwork suggested these weren't mere fantasies of primitive minds but documented encounters with something real and terrifying. As they examined the panels, the temperature plummeted, their breath forming crystalline clouds in the suddenly frigid air. A low hum began resonating through the chamber, vibrating in their bones like the opening notes of some cosmic symphony. Their instruments registered quantum fluctuations that shouldn't be possible, indicating they were witnessing physics operating outside known parameters. Their headlamps revealed a massive chamber ahead, its ceiling lost in darkness. At the center loomed a monolithic structure covered in flowing script that seemed to dance under their lights. Dr. Rose recognized elements from multiple ancient languages, suggesting either unprecedented cross-cultural exchange or something far older than previously theorized civilizations. Her translation device struggled to make sense of the symbols, spitting out fragments of meaning that hinted at concepts beyond human understanding. "What did we wake up?" Jacob whispered, his weapon ready despite knowing conventional armaments would likely prove useless against whatever force they'd disturbed. The station seemed to respond to their presence, sections of wall retracting to reveal additional chambers filled with incomprehensible machinery. Each new discovery raised more questions than answers, creating a growing sense of unease that settled heavily in their stomachs. Environmental sensors detected atmosphere changes, oxygen levels fluctuating wildly, electromagnetic fields intensifying to dangerous levels, and gravity shifts that made walking feel like moving through water. The first encounter happened without warning. One moment the team was documenting findings, the next they were surrounded by flickering shadows that defied physical laws. These weren't simple tricks of light. They moved with purpose, studying the intruders with intelligence that sent primal fear coursing through every nerve ending. Dr. Rose watched in horror as one of her researchers attempted to capture the phenomena on camera, only for the device to overload spectacularly, showering the chamber with sparks. "We need to establish boundaries," Jacob barked, deploying portable containment fields around their perimeter. The shadows pressed against the barriers, testing their strength with increasing aggression. Through the distorted space between dimensions, vague shapes took form, elongated limbs, too many eyes, mouths that opened wider than anatomically possible. The air thickened with ozone and something else, something organic and wrong, making each breath feel like inhaling poison. Their protective suits began registering contamination alerts, though no visible substance could be detected. At the heart of the station, they found what could only be described as a nexus chamber. Massive conduits converged on a central platform where an obelisk-like structure pulsed with rhythmic light. The artifact responded to their approach, its glow intensifying until it became almost blinding. Dr. Rose felt drawn to it, an irresistible compulsion that fought against every instinct screaming at her to run. Ancient warnings etched into the surrounding architecture warned of consequences beyond mortal comprehension, yet the promise of knowledge proved too tempting to resist. Jacob maintained position at the chamber entrance, his enhanced optics scanning for threats while simultaneously trying to ignore the crawling sensation at the back of his neck. Something was watching them, multiple somethings, and they weren't merely curious observers. The very fabric of reality seemed thinner here, like viewing another dimension through gauze curtains that threatened to tear at any moment. Their chronometers began malfunctioning, time measurements fluctuating wildly as if the station existed slightly out of phase with normal spacetime. The artifact began communicating directly with Dr. Rose's mind, bypassing language barriers with raw conceptual transfer. Images flooded her consciousness, entire civilizations rising and falling, technologies that bent physics to their will, and always the hunger. She staggered back, clutching her head as centuries of alien knowledge forced its way into her brain. The station wasn't just a weapon. It was a prison, a laboratory, a temple all rolled into one horrifying package. Her team gathered around her, concern evident in their faces. "We have to seal this place," one of them urged, but Dr. Rose knew better. They'd already passed the point of no return. Whatever they'd awakened wouldn't be satisfied with simple retreat. The shadows outside the containment fields grew darker, more numerous, pressing closer with each passing second. Their time was running out faster than anyone wanted to admit. Environmental conditions deteriorated rapidly, gravity waves rippled through the chamber, spatial distortions made straight lines appear curved, and temporal anomalies caused seconds to stretch into minutes. The station itself transformed around them, walls shifting and reconfiguring like living tissue responding to stimuli. New passages opened while others sealed shut with finality that suggested they might never reopen. Dr. Rose realized with dawning horror that the structure was testing them, evaluating their worthiness to proceed. Each decision point offered choices that carried implications beyond immediate survival. They were being judged by standards they barely understood. Jacob noticed patterns emerging in the changes, mathematical sequences governing the transformations. "It's learning from us," he concluded grimly, "adapting its defenses based on our actions." Their movements through the labyrinth became a deadly game of chess against an opponent that played by rules they barely understood. Every step forward brought new revelations about the station's true nature and purpose, revelations that threatened to break their minds with their implications. Reality seemed malleable here, bending to accommodate the station's will while maintaining just enough consistency to keep them trapped within its confines. In a forgotten archive chamber, Jacob discovered intact data crystals containing recordings from the station's original creators. The images showed beings similar enough to humans to be recognizable, yet distinctly alien in subtle ways. They worked feverishly to contain something within these walls, their expressions shifting from scientific curiosity to abject terror as events spiraled beyond control. The last recording showed mass evacuation attempts thwarted by whatever they'd been trying to imprison. Dr. Rose connected these historical accounts to current phenomena with growing certainty. The shadows stalking their team weren't random manifestations. They were echoes of past failures, memories of those who hadn't escaped in time. Each flicker of movement in the darkness represented someone who'd once stood where they now walked, equally convinced they could master forces beyond their understanding. The realization sent cold sweat trickling down her spine despite the oppressive heat of their environment suits. Their instruments registered quantum entanglements forming between team members and the station's systems, suggesting a deeper connection than mere physical presence. Through painstaking analysis of recovered data, Dr. Rose pieced together the station's primary function. It wasn't designed simply to kill or defend. Those were secondary purposes. Its main directive involved harvesting something fundamental from living beings, something that transcended physical matter. The process left victims intact physically while extracting their essence, leaving behind empty shells that served as vessels for whatever entity required sustenance. Understanding dawned with sickening clarity as she watched her team members begin exhibiting subtle changes. Their eyes held different light, their movements carried unfamiliar grace, their speech patterns shifted toward harmonics that matched the station's ambient hum. The artifact at the heart of the complex pulsed in anticipation, recognizing viable subjects approaching readiness. Time was running out faster than any of them realized, measured not in minutes but in quantum moments of probability collapsing into certainty. Their protective systems began registering phantom life signs throughout the complex, as if the station itself was coming alive around them. Reality fractured around them as the station reached full operational capacity. Gravity fluctuated wildly, sending equipment and personnel tumbling through spaces that refused to maintain consistent dimensions. Dr. Rose and Jacob found themselves separated from the rest of their team, caught in a pocket of stability that seemed deliberately maintained by the station itself. The artifact's glow intensified until it illuminated every corner of their sanctuary, revealing truths about existence that threatened to shatter their sanity. They faced an impossible choice: activate the station's self-destruct mechanism and destroy potentially priceless knowledge, or allow whatever ancient horror dwelled within to fully awaken and spread its influence across the stars. As the decision crystallized before them, the shadows coalesced into definite forms, their features becoming disturbingly familiar. The station had been waiting for this moment since its creation, nurturing patience across eons for the perfect opportunity to transcend its confinement. Space-time anomalies created visual distortions that made focusing difficult, while gravitational waves caused vertigo even within their stabilized zone. The decision hung between them like a guillotine blade, each second stretching eternity as possibilities collapsed into inevitability. Dr. Rose's fingers hovered above the activation controls while Jacob maintained defensive position, his weapon trained on the encroaching entities. The shadows had taken on distinct characteristics now, amalgamations of their fallen colleagues, twisted reflections of their own fears and doubts made manifest. They spoke without words, conveying pure emotion that battered against their mental defenses. Every sensor screamed warnings as the station's core systems synchronized, preparing for full activation. Alien mathematics danced across display screens in cascading patterns that defied conventional logic. Dr. Rose understood now why previous civilizations had tried to bury this place. Knowledge came at a price too steep for any species to pay willingly. Yet the temptation to understand, to master forces that could reshape reality itself, burned brighter than any fear of consequences. Quantum fluctuations created multiple overlapping realities, forcing them to question which version of events was truly occurring. Time fractured further as the station's influence expanded outward, warping not just space but causality itself. Memories blurred at the edges, current events bleeding into potential futures, while past experiences rewrote themselves in real time. Dr. Rose watched helplessly as her research team dissolved into probability waves, their individual identities scattering across quantum states. Jacob's form shimmered between solidity and insubstantiality, his weapon dissolving into abstract energy patterns that pulsed with malevolent intent. The artifact pulsed in sync with their heartbeats, drawing them inexorably closer to its radiant surface. Knowledge poured into their minds unbidden, secrets of creation and destruction, life and death, existence and void. Each revelation carried the weight of galaxies, threatening to crush their consciousness beneath the burden of infinite understanding. The shadows closed ranks, their forms stabilizing into nightmarish perfection as the station prepared to birth its masterwork. Reality shards floated in the air like broken glass, reflecting impossible angles and perspectives that challenged their grasp on rational thought. A sudden surge of resistance manifested as latent human determination pushed back against the station's influence. Dr. Rose's training kicked in, decades of scientific discipline fighting to maintain rational thought amidst chaos. She identified pattern anomalies in the station's transformation sequences, microsecond discrepancies that betrayed its artificial nature. Jacob utilized his tactical experience to exploit these weaknesses, targeting structural nodes that rippled reality's fabric. Together they forged a desperate plan, combining their strengths to create interference patterns that disrupted the station's harmonic resonance. The artifact's glow faltered, its perfect symmetry fracturing into chaotic light displays. The shadows recoiled, their forms destabilizing as the fundamental frequencies sustaining them shifted out of phase. For the first time since entering this nightmare, hope flickered like a pilot light in darkness, fragile but persistent. Their coordinated efforts created ripple effects throughout the station's systems, causing cascading failures that spread like cracks in ice. The counteroffensive gained momentum as Dr. Rose and Jacob synchronized their actions with machine-like precision. She manipulated environmental controls while he coordinated physical interventions, each move calculated to maximize disruption. The station fought back with increasing desperation, unleashing phenomena that defied physical laws, gravity wells that shouldn't exist, temporal loops that trapped seconds in infinite repetition, spatial folds that compressed meters into millimeters. Their combined efforts created a feedback loop that amplified minor instabilities into major disruptions. Support structures buckled under conflicting dimensional pressures, ancient materials failing spectacularly as they exceeded design tolerances meant for gentler times. The artifact's pulsing grew erratic, its light spectrum shifting into dangerous ultraviolet ranges that forced them to avert their eyes. Victory seemed possible, though at what cost neither could predict nor control. The station's systems began cannibalizing themselves, creating chain reactions that threatened to consume everything within its sphere of influence. As the station's integrity failed, its true purpose revealed itself in a final burst of clarity. This wasn't merely a weapon or prison but a gateway, a bridge between realms that nature never intended to connect. The shadows coalesced into a single massive form, its features resolving into something simultaneously beautiful and horrifying. Dr. Rose understood now that their struggle had been foreseen, their actions predestined components in a cycle older than stars. With a final coordinated effort, she and Jacob triggered the self-destruct sequence, pouring every remaining joule of power into overloading the artifact's containment fields. Reality convulsed as barriers between dimensions shattered, releasing energies that would sterilize miles of Venorian surface. They ran through collapsing corridors, pursued by wavefronts of pure destruction that erased everything in their path. Emerging into the planet's toxic atmosphere, they witnessed the ground implode beneath them as the station consumed itself in glorious, terrible detonation. Floating in orbit hours later, they watched the mushroom cloud dissipate, knowing they'd prevented catastrophe, but at the cost of irreplaceable knowledge. The universe remained safer in its ignorance, though both survivors carried scars, physical and psychological, that would never fully heal. Their gazes met with shared understanding. Some discoveries were meant to stay buried, their mysteries preserved for reasons humanity might never fully comprehend. Instruments aboard their ship registered residual quantum echoes suggesting the station's influence might not be entirely extinguished, leaving open the possibility that their victory might be temporary. If you enjoyed this journey into the unknown depths of Venoria, subscribe now to explore more thrilling adventures across the galaxy.